Cool. Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. Really happy to be supporting Jam. It's been a fantastic day so far, and I've learned so much. So thank you guys for putting this on, and thank you everyone for coming. So my name is Simon Rohrbach. You can follow me on Twitter, or you can follow our design team on Twitter as well. If you wonder where the surname comes from, I'm Swiss. So that's where I'm from. Not quite where I'm from, but kind of. But yeah, this presentation is sponsored by Swiss Tourism, so go there, it's beautiful. But I'm here to talk about the new look that we launched about 2 months ago, which hopefully you've all seen. And I'm here to give you the raw story. Because Jam is all about raw stories, and about cutting the bullshit, and really telling you the inside story of what the challenges were, what we learned, what went well, what didn't go as well, etc. And whenever you kind of launch like a new identity and you put it out there in the world, the official story is always a bit like this, right? It's all really happy days and it's fantastic, everyone's really excited, etc., etc. But internally, sometimes it can be a bit like this, right? It can be really, really hard. There can be lots of challenges. There are lots of things that can go wrong, and that's what I'm here to talk about, to kind of give you a bit of the inside track about what we learned and what we recommend for anyone who's thinking about doing similar things. So I'm here to talk about the raw story. I want to talk about why we did what we did, but also what we did, how we did it, and how it felt. And I want to focus on the latter two parts, because I think the first two parts are things that you can look up online. What we did is pretty much out there in the world now. That's what you see today. So don't think I have to talk about that too much, but come up and ask me afterwards if you want to know more about that. But I'm going to focus on that on the latter two parts mainly. So I'll briefly go through kind of why we did it and what the reasons were for us overhauling the way we look and feel and the way we talk. So everything starts small. When I joined Deliveroo, the office looked like this. That's the actual truth of like a scrappy operations-focused startup. We were about 10 people back then. It was a windowless, tiny office without heating. It was fucking horrible. But it felt real. It was a great experience. It was great to be there. And that's where we designed the logo that we had, and it was really not much more than that. It was a logo. I put that together in like 2 days. We all got together in the room. We all agreed that, hey, let's use teal because no one else uses that. We all like it. Let's just go with it. Little did I know about how big this thing would grow eventually. This was the first ad we ever took out in company history. We agonized over it, over what we would say, what the wording would be, what the colors would be, etc., etc. It was the first ad ever. And as we started doing more of that, we realized that we were kind of lacking a creative strategy in terms of what we would say, how we would communicate. How do we say what we believe in? Who do we talk to? All these sort of things were questions that were suddenly kind of popping up. And the company was growing massively. Back then we were 10, now we're just over 1,000 globally. That was over 2 years. And we suddenly wanted to do all these different things that the brand just wasn't made for. We wanted to really invest in a rider kit, make it really safe and visible and awesome. We wanted to evolve our products, have a really clear and beautiful design language for it. And we wanted to do all of that suddenly in 12 different countries around the world. So the first thing that I want to share with you as a lesson learned is that every single decision that you make is a big decision. There is no such thing as a small decision when you're in a growing company. Because all the things that you make a decision on, like choosing teal, which is fairly random, are things that you live with forever after. So that's really important to keep in mind. I'll briefly talk about what we did. So you've all seen this. We have a new logo, which we believe beautifully expresses the pride that everyone feels in working at Deliveroo and sort of the edgy and the vibrant nature of what we want to do, and the boldness of our ambition to build the best food delivery experience in the world. We have these angles that we're incorporating into the creative world that we're building around the logo that really kind of inform how we design our products and our ATL and our marketing campaigns, etc. And we also have this new color scheme that we've expanded dramatically. We've given all these new colors food-related names, which we really like. Burger sauce is my personal favorite. We have a new typeface. At the time when we chose it, it actually wasn't released. So we were one of the first brands to really adopt it on a large scale. So we now have a customized version of this typeface called Stratos Deliveroo. Stratos was the original typeface. We had it customized slightly. We have a new photography style that really celebrates the glorious imperfection of food and really zooms in all the way into this detail and hopefully makes you very hungry. So these are all shots we actually produced, and they're super hard to produce these shots. Like, each of these shots will take days to complete, because food is tricky, right? When you want to get that sauce just right, that sauce drips, so you have to make another burger, and it takes time and time and time again. But we have this beautiful new photography style that's just, unlike anything that's been out there before, that we're really happy with. We have a new ATL style as well for marketing campaigns that incorporates the slant that you've seen in the logo. It's just beautiful, this beautiful, expressive, and vibrant and bold new visual language that we're applying across all our products around the world. So I'll talk a bit about how we did it. When we sort of started realizing that, hey, we need to kind of create a more clearly defined creative strategy, we kind of went on a bit of a soul searching mission and kind of like tried to figure out what it is that we want to express. And through that, we started lots of different companies that could help us with that. One of those companies was Design Studio. Design Studio are the guys that famously rebranded Airbnb. And we really felt that their creative approach was just the perfect partnership for us. And they were just absolutely amazing to work with. So we picked those guys to work with, and it was probably one of the best decisions we ever made. And we decided to announce it to the company that we were working on overhauling the way we looked and the way we felt. And at that point, we encountered an internal challenge we hadn't really thought of, which is that you want to make sure that you involve others in the company, because at that point the company is quite big, it's growing very fast. You want to make sure that you involve others in the company and you bring them on the journey, that you tell them about why you're doing this, that you tell them about why this is important, and that you make them feel that they can have input in the project. However, you need to also balance that with staying nimble, right? And the moment you involve lots of people, it slows you down, and you can't win if you're slow. And the other problem that we kind of encountered was that change creates opinion. If you look at a previous logo, everyone was happy with it. Everyone loved it. People loved the kangaroo. And there are lots of things that were wrong with the kangaroo. We actually found out in the process that in China, for example, the kangaroo is considered as a dirty animal, which doesn't help if you're a food delivery company. In markets like Spain, it could sometimes be misinterpreted as a rat, which also doesn't help if you're a food delivery company, right? But people love the brand. And the moment you change that, and it affects everything that the company does, how we communicate, how we look, how people think about the place where they work, everyone suddenly has an opinion. And that can be really hard to manage. What also doesn't help is that you have glass-walled meeting rooms around the entire office. So when you present something on screen, such as mock-ups of what the new logo might be, lots of people start commenting on it, so you get stuff like this, right? And that's internal. And that's really hard to deal with when you're going through this process and you're a really small group. You get comments like these. Or like this, right? I realized at that point, no one said it was easy. It was a really, really challenging process to go through. And it really sort of tests your mettle a little bit in terms of how strongly you believe in this being the right thing and how strongly you believe in doing that. To really push forward with it despite perhaps other people that you've worked with for a long time, being unhappy, rightly, about the fact that perhaps that they haven't been involved as early as they should have been. So lesson learned number 2 is internal communication is half the battle. You have to bring people on the journey. You have to make sure everyone really believes in it and show them the reason as to what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. So we created lots of workshops with international markets. We got lots of people together. We started talking as a company about what we wanted to be 5 years on, what the mission was that we wanted to accomplish, and that really helped in bringing everyone together and getting everyone behind this project. We started sketching out with Design Studio lots of kind of ideas of what we could do with the logo going forward that encompassed all those values that we talked about in those workshops. We explored 2 different routes. One route was completely hitting the reset button. The other route was evolving what we had already because there already was a fair bit of brand equity in teal and in the kangaroo. So we chose that route, and we explored what we could do with the kangaroo. And we started focusing on the head very quickly and thought that actually an abstraction of that could be really interesting to explore. And that's kind of how we arrived at this. So we had this, and we thought, now we can launch, right? So design studio came in. We started mapping out the whole kind of all the things we have to do in order to bring this to launch, in order to make sure that we could really go through with this and make this a success. We had this massive kind of like post-it wall where we mapped everything out. There on the left-hand side, that's where we were at the time. So we suddenly started realizing, and these are only just the deadlines, these are not the things we had to do. These were all the deadlines we had in order to make this happen around the world. And we realized there's all these things we have to do suddenly, right? Such as this. When you look at the rider kit, you have to start looking at, what are the different climate requirements that we have. You can't just design a jacket for 12 different climates around the world. You have to make sure that it's breathable, that it's waterproof, that it's light, that can be combined with other layers. So you have to start going through all of that. You have to make sure that safety-wise, it's really good. And actually also think about how you're going to get it to 12 different countries and 100 different cities in the space of a few weeks. So the logistics of that are massively challenging. And then we realized that there's actually quite a bit more you have to do. You have to continue shipping on the product. You have to make sure that you still work on the existing features, that you're not throwing the existing roadmap out there. But simultaneously, you're going to have to start thinking about how you're going to apply this new look to all your products. And we not only have one product, we have many products, right? We have the consumer product, which is what hopefully a lot of you are using. We also have our rider products, apps for our riders to deliver orders. We have apps for our restaurants. We have internal tools across lots of different platforms. So suddenly, this challenge just multiplies, and there's so much you have to do. And that's when we realized that designing it is actually only a tiny part. Building it is really where a lot of the work goes as well. So third lesson learned is that finished doesn't equal shipped, especially in a case like this, right? If you finish designing something, you haven't launched it yet, and the difference between the two can be massive. So I want to talk a bit about the rider kit and the process that we went through in making that happen. It was really important to us that we had really safe, really visible, and awesome-looking kit that expressed the brand on the streets. So we knew very quickly that we wanted to look at reflective materials and see what we could do with that. This is the same photo with flash, with knife and flash, so it's highly, highly visible. So we started sourcing lots of materials, we started testing them out. We started looking at lots of panels for backpacks as well. We started looking at jackets, and again, tested them at night, which is quite difficult to do because you don't want to get it, you don't want to show the logo before it's ready, but you also have to test it in the real world. These were some of the early jerseys that we looked at for our riders. These are all Lycra jerseys. The color matching on this is an absolute nightmare, I can tell you that. If you have like Pantone swatches and CMYK values and stuff like that, that all just goes out the window when you print on like different types of fabric. It's quite challenging. This was the actual kind of detail of one of the jerseys that we actually ended up going with. So you can see there's lots of detail like reflective in different places. Again, all of which we had to kind of stretch. We had to like push it through the washing machine to make sure it didn't like come off after a wash. There's lots of kind of constraints there that you have to deal with. And that's kind of what we ended up with. These shots are really difficult to again produce because you have to do all of that before the new look actually launches. You have to do all of that before any of the kit arrives because you're working to like a 6 and 9 months timeline in terms of actually getting like all the samples first, making design adjustments, getting more samples, matching the colors again, making sure it's safe again, testing it. All these sort of things take a lot of time. So that's what really kind of drove the timeline of this whole project, was to make sure we could launch all of this at the same time. So we rented out a college, I think in Essex, that was close to the public on the weekend, where we took all these shots. We had to take them in a way that was applicable to 12 different countries around the world. So no road markings on the photos or anything that might kind of hint at which country this might be in. So that was really challenging as well. And our brand design team really did an exceptional job with producing that. our products. We really saw this as an opportunity to bring in more consistency across all our products. We did an audit of what our UI looked like at the time. And you can see there's lots of fragmentation in things like iconography, the colors that we use to communicate different things. All these kind of things, they're quite different because they all kind of evolve over time, and that's the very nature of a brand as it grows. So it was a great opportunity to kind of start documenting how we wanted this new visual language to look and what kind of components we would use where. Something that the whole team can start using and rolling out across different products. So that really was a great forcing mechanism for us to start working on that kind of thing. We documented things like modals and what they would behave like, what they would look like, what the margins were, etc., which is something that we hadn't really had before. So that was a great thing for us to go through. And we ultimately kind of ended up with this beautiful new visual language that's really bold, celebrates big typography, clear contrast, and just giving ample of space to all the different elements that you want to accommodate on a screen. And it really helped us when we thought about visual design decisions as well. Lesson learned number 4 that I would share there is it's important to start early and document often. I think in hindsight, we probably didn't give the whole process enough time. We spent a couple of evenings working very late to kind of try and establish this visual language and apply it to all our products and make sure we had something that really worked. But equally, we probably started too late in doing that, and we had to kind of rush things in hindsight. I'm really proud of what we accomplished, but if there's anything I've learned is that even if you start 6 months in advance, you can't start too early, and it's important to document as well. So coming on to the last part, how it felt. Lots of feelings for sure. The main one that came through is that it's the single most incredible thing you can ever do in your life ever. And that's very much the way I felt, and hopefully the way a lot of the team felt as well. It's an incredible privilege to be involved in something like this that affects how a company communicates around the world, how employees think about the company that they work for, how something that really affects the way your products look, the way you communicate and tell people about what you do. So it's an amazing feeling, and I was really happy that we got to be part of that. Everything also kind of outgrows you. You start off kind of in this room where you decide that this is something that you're going to do, and there's 3 or 4 people in the room that decide that kind of thing and that make up the core group of the project. And suddenly, sort of towards the end, you have a PR team working on communication strategy, you have the press team getting ready for the press release, you have the QA team testing the latest app release before we can release it to the world, you have front-end engineers working on all kinds of different aspects, defining a style guide, etc. You have designers working overtime to define this one little icon that you want to push in the right part of the app. You have the right operations team getting ready to communicate to riders. You have the procurement team thinking about how to roll this out in the shortest time possible. So everything just becomes much bigger than what you ever imagined it would be. Which again is this beautiful feeling of being out of control, but also having created something that's so inspiring and motivated so many people to work so hard. And also, you kind of expect the worst, but you hope for the best. I was literally visualizing conversion rates tumbling after this launch, and there being a massive shitstorm, and us having to revert to the previous look again because the new one was so poorly received, and all the products would tank, and everyone would hate it, etc., etc. Sort of all the things that because you see kind of the fallout from other new visual identities when they're being launched, and you feel oh fuck, what happens if that happens to me? And I was kind of literally picturing I'll have to resign, and this will be horrible, this will end my career, etc., etc., right? So you start obsessing over it. Then the other question is to check or not to check Twitter on the day that it launches. I decided I would check a little bit. And certainty is a great thing. You work on this for so many months, over a year. There's so many things that can go wrong. And suddenly, if you're a week or 2 before launch, there's a beautiful feeling about inevitability and the fact that this is definitely going to happen. It's going to go ahead. And even though it's terrifying on one hand, it's also really exciting and really nice to know that it's going to happen. But it is one of the best things ever you could possibly ever be involved with ever in your career. So try and get involved in kind of thing, something like that. So to finish off, quick kind of recap of what the launch day was like, September 5th. I took lots of photos. This was just at midnight. A few of us left in the office to press the button and prepare everything for the next day. This was the goodie bags we're starting to assemble for all the people in different offices that would get this on the morning of the 5th when they came into work. This was 1:45 when we got ready to press the button. There was no big red button, sadly. I would have loved that. That was 1 minute after we launched it. I love that. I mean, seriously, like, textbook. Great, loved it. That was just under an hour later when the app became available in the App Store. That was later that morning. Someone actually took the time. This is not an iPhone photo. Like, you know, this is like an actual DSLR photo with like the right white balance and like, you know, exposure levels like adjusted, right? Like someone actually took time to do this, which I think is the best compliment ever when you launch something like this. Because they actually took the time to do that, which means that it meant something to them, which I thought was amazing. That was 9:30 when people were lining up for the firm-wide, where we celebrated the launch of the new look. That was slightly later, the queue for all the goodie bags that we had prepared overnight. And those were some of the reactions that we had. And there are lots of good reactions as well. But what I think is important here is that negative feedback is a really positive thing. Because it means that people care. It means that you made someone take time out of their day to comment on this. And the worst possible thing that could happen when you launch something like this is that people just move on. And that nobody really gives a shit. And everyone kind of goes like, yeah, all right, I like it. That wouldn't be a success. But we made something edgy enough and bold enough and forward-looking enough that people actually started thinking about it. And that, I think, means everything to me. But really only just starting this journey. You know, our products, if you look at the new look, they're still in a very early phase of really applying that visual language. So you'll see some really cool things, hopefully in the future. But we're really only just starting with this new look of ours. So we have an incredible amount of work to do. Obviously, we're hiring lots. So come join us. We have a site, Deliveroo.design. Check it out. We're going to publish some more posts on this whole process in the next few weeks. I'd love for you guys to come and read it. But yeah, that's me. Thank you very much.